All right, so clearly by the title, I'm going to be stirring the pot a little bit today. This is a philosophy that I've developed over the years that I'm very confident in, and I know it goes against the grain of what you've been told and probably brainwashed with for the past few years, but hear me out. I have a couple good arguments that I think can make a really good point against the general consensus when it comes to strength work and hypertrophy work, when it comes to lifting and trying to get bigger. So strength work is the real accessory work. Before I go into my points directly, one thing I do want to say is I don't view work as big, heavy compounds, important strength work, and accessory or assistance movements. I've debunked this before. I think I have a video called, I want to say it's dismantling the term accessory lift or debunking the term accessory lift. Definitely watch that video right after this one if you haven't seen it yet. Also very important. But every lift is its own utility. It doesn't matter if the lift is heavy or big or compound or isolation. It doesn't matter because they all have their own value. And obviously there's some lifts that are just bad, but that's on extreme examples. And there's some lifts that are really good, but most lifts, they're their own tool. They have their own utility. So I do explain that much better in that other video. So watch that one after this one. I don't want to make the same video, so I'm going to get right into my points here. So I don't like to rank lifts on how good or bad they are, but I do like to classify every lift's utility so you understand why you're doing the lift in the first place, and we can execute each lift with the same effort regardless of the utility of that lift. So what does that mean? That means we don't view isolations or hypertrophy movements or cables or machines as inferior to big, heavy compound movements. This is how you get an incomplete physique. If you just put all your focus into big, heavy compound lifts, those by nature leave out certain details of your physique and smaller muscle groups that don't get hit optimally from those movements. So you are shortchanging yourself. So why are those lifts more important than, let's say, a bicep curl? They're really not. When you actually think about this stuff, they're really not. So with that being said, I do understand not everyone agrees with my philosophy. So this point is for those of you who stick to the standard power building type philosophy, and that's very loose, by the way. If you are going to view your training as part strength work and part accessory work, you view the accessory work as inferior. I want to challenge your opinion on why strength work is more important than accessory work. If you are looking to get bigger, would you really pick strength work over your accessory work? Strength work is very incomplete on its own, and it is a more minor part of any hypertrophy program. Accessory work, on the other hand, can cover all methods of hypertrophy, including strength, but not necessarily the other way around. So when I talk about these points here, I'm using these power building terms. These aren't words that I actually use. I hate to call something strength work. Like, what does that mean? And I hate to call something accessory work because why are you calling it accessory work? And again, I talk about that in another video, but those are my thoughts on this. When it comes to training, every lift is its own tool. So to take this point from people that do classify lifts as strength work, which would by definition be squat, bench, deadlift, and small variations of that we go heavy on, and accessory work is like machines, cables, isolations that we just kind of half-ass at the end of our workout because we don't care about them. When it comes to hypertrophy, you will get so much more out of half-assing your strength work and putting all of your effort into your accessory work. If you were to do, let's say a lot of these guys do push-pull leg splits. If your push day consists of like a barbell bench and then a bunch of like accessory type work, like incline dumbbell bench, pec deck, side raises, overhead press, overhead extensions for your triceps, and then tricep pushdowns, if you execute your bench to the best of your ability and then kind of half-ass everything else, or maybe give it like a 75% effort or something, you are getting far less results than if you actually just like half-assed your bench and treated that like your accessory work, but then put all your effort into the rest of your program with the most volume. You would get far superior results, at least for sure in hypertrophy, and probably pretty similar results in strength too if you trained that way, because when you call something strength work and something accessory work, you're immediately just like devaluing like 80 or 90% of the training itself. So it really just doesn't make any logical sense to view your training like this. So if anything, and obviously this isn't my thoughts, and this isn't the way I think. I do view everything with its own utility, and I keep repeating myself so you understand my points. Strength work, if I had to pick, would be the accessory work. That's the one that I would choose to not put all my effort into. I would reverse what most people think. So calling it accessory work is the coward's way out. That's a big statement. If you think hypertrophy work is easy, you are definitely training it wrong. So hypertrophy work is difficult. Just because a movement's lighter or it's an isolation movement doesn't make it easy. If your hypertrophy work and your accessory type isolation movements are easy, there is a 99% chance you are literally training them incorrectly. You're probably too far away from failure. You probably have bad technique. There's some type of fundamental that isn't right. Because if you think that accessory work with the right technique, the right form, the right rep range taken to failure is easy, you're doing something wrong. You really are. And you have to think about this stuff. I can't diagnose it through this video, but I'm going to say with a 99% chance that you're doing something wrong. Your accessory work should be really difficult. It shouldn't be like impossible, but it should hurt. Like, this stuff isn't easy. This is why a lot of people start off wanting to get bigger and just kind of veer off towards power building a little bit. So calling it accessory work kind of subconsciously makes you not apply much effort into it. And that's why it's the coward's way out, because it's the difficult stuff. It's most of your training, and we half-ass it. That's the way we've viewed this for years. And that's why I think it is the coward's way out. So an argument I have here, so this is going to be what I call the calves argument, and this is kind of a preview to one of my next videos. The reason why we have the meme of lifters having small calves is because there's only one way to train them, and that's through isolation movements. Ask yourself, do you really think calves are a muscle that just doesn't grow on most people? Or do you think it's because most lifters write off their isolation work, resulting in small calves? I'm not going to touch too much on that. That's for my next video. But think about that for a second. You take a muscle that most lifters haven't really grown very much. It's going to be their calves. And that's because you're not able to target your calves very well at all through any compound movements. Like, sure, maybe deadlift or a tiny bit on the squats, but not enough to grow them whatsoever. The reason why lifters have small calves is because they don't actually train them hard, because you have to train them with isolation movements. That is why. So you'll see lifters do calf raises, standing calf raises, donkey calf raises, machine calf raises, but they don't actually try on them because it's tough and it hurts, and that's why their calves aren't big. It's not because your calves just don't react to stimulus. Like, I definitely want to debunk that viewpoint and debunk that argument. So ask yourself that. The muscles that are best trained through isolation work, why are those always the ones that are the smallest? Is it because isolation lifts don't work? No, it's because we don't train our isolation lifts hard enough. We don't train them properly because they're so difficult. And I know that's the opposite of what we've been told, but it's true, at least in my opinion. So next one I have here is to reverse this mindset. We need to have a new perspective as bodybuilders. Rather than perceiving lifts themselves as good or bad, or big or small, we need to view our physique muscle by muscle and reverse engineer our training to build everything up optimally. It doesn't matter if a muscle is best built through a compound or isolation. We need to view them as equal but different tools. So when it comes to your physique, if you just do squat, bench, and deadlift, you're going to have an ugly physique. It's just the way it is. Unless you're a genetic elite person and you just train the power lifts and somehow like get big shoulders just from benching, then sure, that's fine. You can do that. But 99% of people aren't going to get proper results from doing that. You're not going to build the physique you're looking to. So what you need to do is, rather than saying, oh, this is the lift I can load the most, or this is the biggest lift, or this is the lift I'm the best at, or the one that people talk about the most, that's not so important. You have to reverse engineer your actual physique. So, okay, how are we going to grow my rear delts? Are we really going to grow it from deadlifts and pull-ups? Probably not. Let's add in some face pulls. Let's add in some machine flies or cable reverse flies or something. So you need to reverse engineer your physique, pick the best lift for each muscle group accordingly. If there's muscles that aren't that important and don't need to be isolated a whole ton, compound movements are fine, especially if you have a muscle that you don't care too much about growing. Like for me, I don't really care about my hamstrings that much. So like I'll just do a couple of Romanian deadlifts and I should be fine. So I don't do a whole ton of volume. I don't do anything crazy, just enough to give them a little stimulus, but not overkill and every angle on the isolations like I would other muscles. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. We need to reverse this perspective. I will have more in-depth videos on this on the future, but I do want to kind of put this thought out there, get some feedback, and make a further in-depth video in the future. So with all that said, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions.